Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Mysteries and Oddities video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's start this whole new playlist here. We're going to start with a new suggestion. Please keep those suggestions coming. I'm going to go ahead and do maybe about 5 or 6 videos in total, so it'll be interesting to see what people have to recommend. This one has to do with the incredible claim of a man who states that he lived over 80 plus years without food and water. You heard that correctly. Imagine that. Imagine being not just one day without food or water, but 80 plus years. But apparently it's true. And there's still some debate, though, associated with the claims with this man, although there were researches, 2 of them, that were done to showcase how and why he was able to do this. But there's a lot of things that still remain mysterious. But let's go ahead and let's talk about that here. In fact, you're looking at a picture of him now. He goes by a name known as Prahlad Jani, but he also had other names as well. So let's go ahead and let's share this info about this mysterious man and then see exactly why that was the case. The man who essentially lived without food and water. So here's his story. He was born back on August 13th, 1929, there in a village called Charada in India. There's not much information associated with his early life, like when it comes to his very young years, but somewhere along the way at age 7, he left his home and then eventually went to live in the jungle. So he was basically out there in the foresty type areas just by himself, just essentially living as is. And then somewhere along the way at age 12, that's when he claims he had a spiritual experience. This is where something that actually ties into his next claims about living without food and water. He states that he was visited by a goddess, someone that was essentially a god by the name of Amba, if I'm not mistaken, and then that this goddess would provide him with water that would come down into his throat, and that would essentially allow him to live without food or water going forward. I don't know how that water was given to him, but according to him, he claims that it was just there dropping down in his throat, and then that's where he essentially was able to sustain himself. And that's how he lived thereafter. In fact, not only that, but he also dressed in a particular manner devoted to the goddess, and then also went by certain names associated with that goddess too. But yes, going forward, since that exact time, since that divine experience, that's when he was living as a hermit in a cave there in a forest called Gujarat. And then that's where people started to realize, here you have someone who is surviving without any kind of food and without any kind of water in that area there. Obviously, that is a big claim, right? You can barely survive without food or water one day. In fact, the common notion is the maximum you could do without food is a good number of days, but water, no, like it's going to be less than a week's time when it comes to that. There's various reasons behind it, but it all ties into sustenance. You definitely have to have nurturing food and water within your body to be able to survive. And that ties into not just bodily functions, but also the brain itself. But here's this guy who's claiming 80 plus years when it comes to that. And it was his life, because eventually he became a monk, and then he was someone that spent so much of his time, his waking time, essentially meditating. Somehow he was able to create the scenario where there he was, just living as is without food and water. So 2 tests were done to try to find out exactly how this was. 2 investigations. One occurred in 2003. This was one where he was observed specifically for 10 days. Prahlad Jani was there in an area called Ahmedabad, India, at a hospital called Sterling Hospital. He was there with some physicians, and they made sure that he stayed in a sealed room, and then they also made sure that he was under observation to make certain that there was obviously no food, no water that he had hidden, nobody else that could bring him that kind of stuff, nothing. And then also there were inspections done in terms of him having to go to the bathroom and making sure that he passed, that there was nothing funny going on during that time period too. But lo and behold, 10 days into it, he was absolutely there, not drinking anything, not eating anything. And not only that, but he didn't go to the restroom. So he had no number one, no number two, nothing during that time period either. And he was observed as being physically normal, although there was something involving some kind of hole that was there in his body that was considered abnormal. But otherwise, his weight went down slightly, but nothing else stood out when it came to that test. There was a further test that was done in 2010, a more rigid one that involved not just a team, but a very large team of 35 researchers who all got together, and this time they wanted to make certain that there was going to be even more intensive study there. In fact, not only were there examinations done, but there were also blood tests, there were scans, there was round-the-clock surveillance, there was cameras that were there too, and there was also personal observations that were done too as well. The auspices on this one was that this test, this type of investigation could help, because if he can survive with this like apparent long time period without food and water, then other people, including quote-unquote soldiers, victims of calamities, and even astronauts, they could have some kind of research done, given to them to try to make them survive under those type of extreme scenarios too. So that was at least some of the reasons for this other test. And this guy, Prahlad Jani, decided to go ahead and do that. He was very welcoming when it came to anyone wanting to make certain that they could observe him and make sure that he passed everything as far as those claims of not drinking water and not eating any kind of food. And so that happened. That went for a good while. And during those 15 days, all of this that was happening, he apparently did not eat, drink, or go to the restroom at all. There's a controversy, though, for this test, because it turns out, well, I read in one area that this did happen, and I read in another area that this didn't happen. But apparently he was allowed to bathe and then also gargle, I guess brush his teeth or make sure that his mouth was cleaned and so on. So there's some controversy stating that that could have been a chance for Prahlad Jani to be able to secretly have some kind of food or water given to him. I mean, obviously when someone is bathing, they could drink that water and so on. But no, that's one example. And then the other one is that he was not allowed to do it, and that he actually went outside of the camera's range. Like he even had some people that he was able to see and meet, especially when he went sunbathing outside. And then that could have been an area that he had some things done, like in terms of secret food or secret water given to him. But all in all, though, that same examination was finalized in 2010, and the investigation showed that once again he didn't eat, he didn't drink, he didn't go to the restroom. Everything was fine. So 2 total examinations about what had happened to him, including the idea that further studies were going to be planned, as well as, what happened to his body's waste. Because if after those, in the first case, 10 days on the first test, and then the second test, 15 days, and the body still creates some kind of waste, then what happens to him, that was going to be one of the other tests too. And then eventually there was another study that was done on him as well in 2017, a brain scan, and it showed that he had what was considered the pituitary glands of someone that was a 10-year-old boy. So I don't know exactly how that pertains to him being able to have such a high degree of not eating anything or drinking anything, but that's at least one other study that was done on him. But all in all, his claim still baffled people to this day, because it seems that everything was proven true. Like there was 100%, almost 100% indication that he truly could last, at least under those observable days, a good amount of time without drinking anything, eating anything, or going to the restroom. And if but for the fact that there was a slight loss of weight, and then something else, like in terms of his pituitary gland being considered more of a 10-year-old, that was it. There was nothing else that truly stood outside of the ordinary of him. Eventually, he ended up dying. He died on May 26, 2020. I didn't see what the conditions were of his death. He was actually 90 at the time, so maybe he just ended up dying peacefully of old age. But with him went the mystery as to how he was able to do this for so long. Whatever type of study that someone was going to do on him as to his claims of, again, not being able to eat or drink anything. That went with him once he ended up dying. And so how he was able to do it, no one knows, but at least based on the research and his claims, this is truly the man that could live without food and water. But that's pretty much it. That's all the information associated with Prahlad Jani. So if anybody has any more info, something else I might have missed, then please post those comments below. What do you guys think? Can truly someone survive that long without drinking anything or eating anything? Sounds very, very hard to believe, right? I mean, I've even been in situations before where close to like 1 day without eating anything, and boy, does the body react differently when it comes to that. It's like basically working so hard in the morning and then coming home late at night, finally eating something at night itself. The body tells you, right? Like it tells you that it's having problems. But imagine 80 plus years. How does that work? But apparently Prahlad Jani was able to do it. But if anybody has any more info, please let me know. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.